4-1 Day 1 Exponential Functions. Your learning goal is that you will be able to evaluate exponential functions with and without base E and graph exponential functions. In example 1, you're going to approximate each number using a calculator, and then you're going to round your answer to 3 decimal places. So in your calculator, you would just type in 2, and then the caret key, which is your exponent key, 3.4. And you just simply type that in, and they want you to round to 3 decimal places. So you should get 10.556. And then you have a key on your calculator that is e to the x power. This e is an irrational number, kind of like pi, and I'll explain later when it's used. But to type this in, you have to use your second key. And then you have to use the VLN key, or natural log. And right above that, you'll see the e to the x. So you're doing second to get to that key. And then you should see something like this pop up. And you type in negative 0.75. And you should get 0.472. In example 2, we're going to graph exponential functions. The general form of an exponential function is in this form. F of x equals a b exponent x minus h plus k. Now, here's some things you need to know about an exponential function. An exponential function can be in either of these forms, where you can actually see it growing or decaying. It can also look like this, or it can come from this way. And they have what are called asymptotes. Which are always y equals k. So that k value gives you your asymptote, that horizontal line that your graph gets close to or it approaches. And when you're graphing your exponential functions, it's good to plug in 3 x values. So you're going to make a table of values, and one of them can be your y-intercept, or should be your y-intercept, which you would find by plugging in 0 for x and solving for y. Plug in 0 for x and solve for y. And then you need to include the domain, which are your x values, and since you get to choose x values, it's always negative infinity to positive infinity. Your range, depending upon how your graph is drawn, it can either be k to infinity, not included because you can't, your graph is approaching the asymptote, or it may be negative infinity to your k value. Okay, example 2a, we're going to graph h of x equals 1/3 to the x. Your book is going to tell you to use transformations, but do not use transformations. So what you're going to do is make a table of values, and you can plug in whatever values you want. I'm just going to use -1, 0, 1. And you're going to plug those in. If you plug in -1, you should get 3. If you plug in 0, anything to the 0 power is 1. And then if you plug in 1/3, you get 1/3. Okay, so your asymptote, I'm just going to abbreviate it, is A, is always y equals k. In this case, k is 0. So you're going to have an asymptote at y equals 0. And then you're just going to plot your points. -1 and 3, 0 and 1, and 1 and 1/3. Notice your y-intercept was 0, 1. You have your domain, which is always negative infinity, positive infinity, because you get to choose your x values. And your range, in this case, will be k, which is 0 to infinity. In example 2b, doing a more complex graph, but you still plug in 3 x values. And this is where it gets kind of tricky, because you need to plug in x values that are going to make it easy for you to work this out. And sometimes you don't know. So I'm going to use -2. I'm going to use 0. And let's do -1. And when you're plugging these in, you have to be careful because you want to use order of operations. So when you plug in, for example, -2, you want to do your exponents first. Because plugging in -2 will give you 2 to the 0 power. Remember, anything to the 0 power is 1. And you need a common denominator. So that makes that -3/2. And then you do the same thing for 0. And then you do the same thing for 1. Or excuse me, -1. Which would be -2. And then you draw your graph. And now if you notice, your asymptote in this case is y equals -1. Your y-intercept is 0, -3. And you're just going to plot the other points. And I just missed the whole point. And then you have your domain. Now look at your graph. Your graph now is going from -infinity to your k value, which is -1, not including.